Hello and welcome everybody to Flicker Effect, episode 376. We are recording this and broadcasting live on Thursday. I had to think about that. Thursday, August 19th, 2021. I'm David Lotz. Joining me for this is Bobby Jackson. How's it going, Bobby?
Hey, it's going pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. We thought we would do a little midweek show, catch up on a lot of the stuff we've watched this summer or recently that we haven't gotten to. That mostly pertains to you. I know you have watched a lot, and then there's been some shows you unfortunately weren't able to make it to. So I think you've kind of probably built up a nice library of content to talk about.
Yeah, it's a decent amount.
Yeah.
Honestly, not as much as I thought. And mainly I think that's because even when was on the shows or when we were starting to get ready to end the show, I'd just sort of blast through a few things that I watch and maybe do a sentence or two talking about certain things. So probably on a different type of a show, I would have gone into a little bit more depth in some of those things. But I at least wanted to get them out there to mention just in case, or if it became way too long to be able to talk about certain things. So I think I went through a good amount of it as I was looking through my list, but I still do have a few things left to talk about, though.
The funny thing is, I actually probably have more to talk about on this show than I have in a while.
I like it.
I like how excited you get.
I know. I am always excited when you have stuff to talk about because, that's one of the things in which, for those who don't know, me and David met at a Comic-Con many, many moons ago. And we were talking about the fact that you had a podcast and that it was about movies, and movies is something that you enjoy. And it's one of those things that you haven't had a chance to do as much of within the last few years. And so anytime you have a chance to talk about something, I'm always curious to hear what it is and put it on my radar. Because honestly, there's a decent amount of times on the show where you mentioned something and it wasn't something I had heard of or maybe just barely heard of, and you had watched it, or you and Michelle had watched it, and it puts it on my radar. We're like, oh, okay, that's something I need to check out because I hadn't heard anything, or I maybe heard a little bit, and you kind of bring it to the light. So it's always good when I can hear you talk about some things.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about some stuff. I mean, and not to spoil, but in the case of this week, I think just about everything I'm going to discuss is stuff you've seen already, for the most part. A couple things, not so much, but for the most part, it's stuff you've actually probably already talked about on the show that I'm finally catching up with. But I don't know where to get started. I'm actually, you know what? I will start with something if you don't mind. That is not something that I've watched, but it's fresh in my mind because I just finished it today. Ready Player 2.
Really?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I mean, well, obviously everyone probably knows about Ready Player One. There was the book, obviously, that both of you and I listened to. Neither of us read it, but we listened to the audio book, which Will Wheaton did the narration for. And I really enjoyed it. In fact, I've listened to that book twice. I'll be honest.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those, like, sometimes with my job, doing some driving, and it was just like there was another point months later. I forget how much time had passed, and I was like, you know what? I just want to listen to it again. I listened to it a second time. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the movie. Movie's a bit different, as movies are, but I thought the movie was overall pretty good. I was happy with it. And then it's funny, like, I've been excited about Ready Player 2 since I enjoyed the first one so much. And this is just another, I think, like, I don't know what the word is, catastrophe of 2020 or something. Like, 2020 was just so weird and threw, I think, all of us off to a certain extent, where either it felt like it flew by or it felt like it took forever and things just got lost in the mix, I think, in 2020. And I even remember when I follow Will Wheaton on his Instagram, and he was like posting a couple photos, like when he was in the doing the recording sessions for Ready Player 2. I was like, all right, cool, it's coming up. And then it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago that I randomly put on Ready Player One, the movie for the kid. Like me and the kids were watching it just randomly one weekend. And talking to Michelle, the subject of the book, the sequel came up, and I was like, yeah, I think that comes out this November, like November of 2021. And I look, and it came out last November of 2020, and that just blew my mind. I'm like, how did I miss that? Like really, 2020 just really screwed me up. It blew me away that that book came out, came and went. I really heard nothing about it. So as soon as I realized that, I was like, that's not a good sign. Like the fact that Ready Player Two has been out this many months, and I feel like I really haven't even heard a thing. Immediately, I was like, oh man, is it not any good? But I listened to it, and no, I did not enjoy it nearly as much as the first book. Um,
Mm.
it's one of those things I don't even know if I want to kind of discuss like the general plot, because it's like if you haven't read it or listened to it yet and you want to, maybe you just want to go into it completely fresh, having no idea what's going to happen. And but it's weird. I mean, it's one of those stories where like where he went to create a sequel to the book, I in a way I get why he went the route he went, and I don't necessarily dislike the story he's telling, but there were certain chapters in particular like I had a hard time listening to. It just got really boring, just really bogged down by the amount of like nostalgia stuff. Like it was overdone to a point where it was like, okay, like if especially if you
Mm.
weren't interested in a certain like area of nostalgia that he was covering, like it was just like, okay, man, like or maybe you're describing this a little too much, and let's just move on with the narrative. There was a lot of that. It's one of those tough things to talk about without talking about spoilers. And if you ever listen to it or read it, I would love to jump on here and talk about that book, because in some ways it's telling an interesting kind of scary story. I'll say that, but it's overall, did I enjoy it? I really can't say that I did. I thought I had
Mm.
read that there's still talk of making a movie of the sequel. I don't know anything about
Mm.
that development. I don't know if that's going to involve the same actors from the first film. If in one respect I might go, like no, let's not bother. But at the same time, I could see a situation where the movie, this is a good situation where the movie could hopefully be
Could be better.
a lot better than the book. Um, I could see that happening because it is an
Mm.
interesting story in some respects, but overall, I was kind of bummed I didn't enjoy it that much. Yeah, I finished that today.
Yeah, that is a bummer. Unlike you, I knew that there was the book out last year, but in advance of it coming out, the reviews that I had read, and I didn't read a ton of them, but the reviews that I did read all kind of were saying the same thing, in that it was just maybe overindulgent and just not really interesting, and just repeated themes that the first book did in a way,
Hmm.
and just it was not anything and that they wanted to feel like it was worth their time. On top of, some of those people who were reviewing it didn't like the first one. So I think, I don't know, maybe it doubled down for them not liking the first one and then also not liking this one. But just in general, the overall vibe I got from it was that it was just not very good. So that really dampened my enthusiasm to get it and
To
listen
check it
to it,
out.
because
Yeah.
yeah, because it would have been different if I had heard a few dissenting voices in this respect of people who really enjoyed it and thought it was good. But I didn't read anyone that said they thought it was good. So it was like, well, and it's again, it's not like I looked at a lot in terms of reviews. I maybe looked at a handful, like five or six, and just none of them seemed to like it at all. So I was just like, oh well, I do want to check it out, but maybe I'll just wait and put it on the back burner. So hearing you say that now, it really makes me feel like, yeah, I'll watch the movie version if they ever make one. And like you said, hopefully it'll be a better outcome, because at this point, it almost sounds like it would be hard to make it bad unless you maybe really just translate it directly, and then maybe it would turn out bad because it was a direct translation. But generally speaking, they will change things up, and so you would hope for a good writer that's doing that type of work to where
Mm-hmm.
he's adapting it, that it would really kind of make wonders out of it. So I have hope that for a movie version that it would be significantly better than what the vibe and feel of the people who seem to have read a book, or in your case listened to it, that they would have a better experience. So I don't know. It's too bad. It's too bad.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a good opportunity for the movie to be a lot better. But yeah, again, I'm curious for you to listen to it or read it because
Yeah.
but I have a feeling for the most part you're going to agree with me. Um, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's
No, that's too bad.
it is a bit of a bummer. It's also one of those things too. I will admit I was a little guilty of right from the start of the book, where you know you've seen or read the first movie or book, and you're like, okay, where are they going to go from here? Or maybe like these characters, you have a certain idea about like what would they do next, and like right at the beginning of this book, I was like, oh, what are we doing?
Hmm.
Like it didn't take long for me to go, do I want to listen to this? Like I really questioned. I'm like,
Wow.
do I even want to? Do I just want to
Wow.
stop here and not even do this? That's again. I hate to be
That's
cryptic,
awful.
but that's all I'll say for now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awful. I mean, to be that early on in something and
But then there were
already wanting to
time.
hit the.
Then there were times in the book that I was definitely like, okay, I'm kind of curious to see where we go next, and
Hmm.
I would get more interested in certain parts, and then other parts where, I'll say somebody would go on like a quest, and then
Hmm.
that would just really get bogged down with some of the over nostalgia kind of stuff. It was just
Hmm.
bad. But anyway,
Hmm. Man, that's
uh,
too bad.
what about you? What's the first thing you want to talk about?
Yeah, so there was this thing that came out on Netflix not that long ago. It's not all that old. There was a series of movies that came out over the course of 3 weeks called Fear Street. And the first one was Fear Street Part 1, 1994. And the basic premise of this is that it's an interconnected story that was initially supposed to come out in the theaters. And I don't know in terms of the release schedule of how they were going to do it. I vaguely remember that maybe the idea was that they were going to release this last year or last summer, and it was going to be over the course of 3 months. So one would come out each month. But obviously, COVID and everything else affected it. And I think maybe it might have been even prior to that that they were planning it because if I'm not mistaken, this was under Fox and 20th Century Fox, and it was before the Disney deal had went through that they had these movies, I believe, and then so they were going to put them out last year, and like I said, they couldn't. So the Netflix ended up getting them and putting them out over the course of 3 weeks. And what I'll say about it is it's an interesting way that they did this, and in that they didn't just plop them all down at once, but also the connective story about it had me really engaged in wanting to see where this whole thing went, because the basic premise of it is that there's this curse that seems to be on this town that it's two sides of the town. One side of town seems to get all the good luck, everything goes their way, and then another side of town is just the crappy side, and they just always have crime and bad things happening. And one of the main protagonists in the story, uh, who is involved with another person that's her girlfriend, there's some issue that happens there, and it leads to this old story about a witch that was there in that town, and it kind of follows that through line throughout the three stories that happen. And the first one, like I said, is in 1994, and then the second one, I gotta look it up because I can't remember the way they all went. 1978 is the second one, and then in the third one it's 1666. So what I'll say is, for me, I feel like overall it was good, but some of it was a little bit bloated in the way that it seemed unnecessary. Not that it wasn't, not that they didn't do a good job with it. It just felt like it was more giving into this sort of premise of having these three movies in a way, because the second movie I felt like really could have been just an aspect of the first movie if they had just done it in a way of flashing back more. But it's its own separate thing, and I think that they try and give it its justice because it follows a character that you meet in the first movie back when they were younger, and so it tries to explore that. But in the way that they do that second movie, um, it's a throwback to an '80s slasher because it's like a sleepaway camp kind of thing that they're at in that the setting for that second movie. And then the first one, it's more of a mall setting kind of thing, and the area around that town, and it has this whole vibe of trying to go for the era that it's in. I think my favorite of the three, for different reasons, might be the one that's 1666, just because it really kind of pulls in all the aspects of the first two movies, and also you get some interesting storytelling that's going on there. But I would say it's interesting because from what I understand, I'm not familiar with it at all, but it's based on an R.L. Stein series of books, and I guess it's a little bit more done up for the movies than they were in the books. But overall, I think the idea and the premise of it worked in the way that they did it and had one each week, and it felt like it was definitely riding that wave of being more adult, but still kind of in that area for a certain age teenager to be able to enjoy. And I think that the idea of them maybe doing this again with some R.L. Stein books maybe might be presented, or could be a possibility, because I'm pretty sure it did pretty well on Netflix. But it was a good little horror series in the middle of summer, I think, that just kind of dropped out. And yeah, I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I've been interested in watching it. That was one of those things that came this summer that I was hearing a lot about as those were dropping, what, like you said, like every week.
Mm-hmm.
That I was like, oh, this seems like it's right up my alley, and just with schedule, I never got around to watching. But then
Yeah.
as Halloween is getting closer, I tend to gravitate to stuff like this just to kind of be in that Halloween mood. I could see that this will be something I'll probably watch as we get even closer to Halloween, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some pretty gnarly kills in it. So I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things too that's kind of interesting, that you always look for get kills or interesting kills in the way that they do the slasher film. So there's quite a few in that first film for sure.
I feel like that could be a good segue for something else I've watched this week.
Oh,
Speaking of good kills, um, I don't know if you did that on purpose. I finally
I
watched
did.
Invincible this week. Um, I
Yeah.
finished it this week. I had started it earlier in the summer, actually. And then, again, schedule, didn't get it finished. I had like 3 episodes to go, and I watched those this week. And you've talked about it already on the
Hmm.
podcast. Um, yeah, it's something else, man. That show. I mean, yeah, for those that don't know, it's on Amazon Prime. It's based on a comic. Um, it is animated, but it is certainly not for kids. It is definitely rated R, or I don't, it's not technically rated R. It's a
Yeah.
show, but it would be. It is a very adult, violent, gory, as gory as you can get with animation, I guess, but gory show
Hmm.
at times. I see why because we talked about this on the show too. I think about doing like reaction videos to it,
Right.
and I could see why you were interested if either I or Michelle or both of us would do like reaction videos to that show, because Yeah, man, it was good. I know I'm just all I've said is man, it's something else, but actually no, it was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. And I am very curious to see where it goes from here. Kind of like you, there's a part of me that's like, oh, do I want to read the comic now? But then I'm also like, I'm enjoying the show, so I don't think I'm going
Yeah.
to. I think I'm just going to keep
Hmm.
watching the show. What throws me off is I didn't realize you told me. I guess there's going to be a film of this, but it sounds
Yeah.
like they're going to try in some way to go down a different road. I guess, was it Robert Kirkman, right? Um,
Yeah, he's the creator, yeah.
right.
But
I think he was talking about it at Comic Con at home, actually, in an interview. This was
hmm,
something I read that he gave some quotes that it's basically like it's almost like it's going to be its own thing, even though it's still based on the same material, but it's going to be different from the show, other than the fact that obviously it's going to be live action.
right. Has me
But what
so curious.
Yeah, it has me curious too because what's funny is before I even knew that, I was texting with you saying like I can't imagine. In one way, it would be cool to see this in live action, but I also can't imagine because the level of gore in the show and just blood and violence. I mean, yeah, we see a lot of hardcore violence in live action movies and such, but still, like
Yeah.
I can't imagine them doing things to the extent they did it in the show in live action. I don't know what that would be like. I'm very curious to see what they're doing with the movie.
My only thing, a frame of reference I can think of now at this point would be something on the level of gore between The Boys and Suicide Squad. Uh, the Suicide Squad. And so
Yeah.
I would imagine like, and even then maybe ramped up a little bit more because there's a lot of it in the animated show. And I just think that what even though we're talking about the violence and the gore, those are things that I feel are a part of the story, but the story itself is what is really compelling,
Hmm.
and how uh, it starts off one way and becomes something else, and all the other players and characters that are in this story, and how they all kind of have their own things going on, but also um, even within how they interact with each other, it's all really interesting, and I feel like they do a really good job of world building and feeling like you get a good feel for this universe and want to see it explored more and see other corners of it and see what's coming next, especially when they give you a little bit of a tease of it in that final episode of the season.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that they really um, have something interesting, and I think that's what makes me want to read about it. I should say read the comics because it is a contained story. I don't remember how many issues there are. I want to say it was like 100 and something, or maybe 125 or somewhere around there, but it has a beginning and an end. So it's
Hmm.
not like one of those comics that goes on forever and
Just
ever
on
and
and
is
on and
still going
on,
today.
kind of telling
Yeah,
individual stories, but you never know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what makes me like, man, it's a complete story. I could easily go and just,
And
start
read it
reading
and
it
know.
and get the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. And no. Yeah. But I like the idea of not knowing what's coming and seeing it as it unfolds. And
Hmm.
as I said before, it's easy for me to fall down a rabbit hole of watching other people react to the things that I just saw because I can't believe what I just saw. So I know someone else isn't going to be able to believe it. So it's kind of fun seeing that as well. But just it makes me interested in seeing more of what Kirkman will do within the universe, and if it does spin off into other things. And you mentioned the movie, and the two of the people that are behind it are Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, his producing
Yeah.
partner. So you've seen what he's done so far with material. They're I, they're involved with the boys, so I feel like they're gonna have a lot of interesting things to say and do with a movie version of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really liked it. I know I kept again, like maybe it just sounds like I'm like, oh, it's just great because of like the violence and gore. No, it's the story is quite good, and it's well
Yeah.
told. It's just a well told story,
Hmm.
even as an animated show. It's in the one thing in particular. At first, I was like, I don't know what I think of this shtick, but then as it kept going, I really liked it. The way that they introduced the title card every episode.
Mm, hmm.
I
Hmm.
grew to like that more and more and more as the however many episodes it was went on.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like it got even more creative. I liked it anyway.
Yes, it
So,
does. It
yeah,
definitely does.
Invincible on Amazon Prime if you're interested. What else you got?
So there was this movie that came out that I was really looking forward to on HBO Max, and it seemed like it kind of came and went. No one really talked much about it. I saw some stuff online about it. Some people had some buzz and some interesting, um, I should say, some good things to say about it. And it's called No Sudden Move on HBO Max, as I mentioned, with um, Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro. David Harbour is in it as well, and it's directed by Steven Soderbergh. And this movie is such a it's sort of like one of those type of caper movies. It almost feels like it could be an old school version of an Ocean's 11, which is something that Steven Soderbergh directed as well. But the heist in this is so imaginative that you don't really know and think about it until kind of what they really explain it to you. Um, and I won't spoil that or give it away, but I just feel like the amount of chemistry that goes on between the actors and what they're doing. Okay, here's a weird thing that honestly I don't know how I missed it and wasn't paying attention to it, because normally I would catch stuff like this. But a lot of people who were reviewing it and talking about the movie made comment on the way that it was shot, and they were saying that there's this sort of fisheye lens perspective on a lot of the shots. And I don't even recall that. I guess I was so wrapped up in what was going on in the story that I wasn't even paying attention to the cinematography aspect of it, which I should have been. And it makes me kind of want to go back and rewatch it. But there's just a lot of good actors in there. I had mentioned the Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro, and as I look over on the IMDb, there's also John Hamm in there. One of the people who I really thought was good in it is someone that you don't see much these days, but Brendan Fraser. I thought he was really good as his character, and honestly, David Harbour was good too. But it's so funny because when I was seeing David Harbour in there, it didn't even register that it was David Harbour to me for like the first, I'd say, good 30 minutes before I really realized that it was him. I don't know if he just sort of sank into the role for me or what, because I'm so used to him looking in a certain sort of way, and in this movie he doesn't. So I was kind of thrown off by it. But yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It's just this kind of a caper movie that has a lot of style and slickness to it, but the story of what they're doing is kind of fascinating.
I don't even think I've heard of this, sadly. Like,
Really?
as you were talking about it, I brought up the IMDb page and it automatically is like showing a trailer. And even I made a point to kind of watch a little bit because I see some shots like you're describing where it does have somewhat of, I
Mm.
guess, of a like a wide angle lens. I mean, but
Yeah.
nothing. I don't know. I'm just watching a trailer. It didn't seem like anything too drastic
Hmm.
to me. I'd have to watch the whole thing, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, haven't even heard of
Yeah, it
this.
was a good movie. I liked it.
Nice. Go ahead. Oh, were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say, so what else you got?
What else? I seem to be going back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
So last night I watched a movie that you have seen. Um, so
Mm.
last night, A24 um, did an at home like kind of screening event for The Green Knight, which is in theaters right now. And as I've talked about on the show before, with COVID kind of resurging the way it is, I've been a little like hesitant to go back now to the movie theater. again, and I was like, man, I really want to see the Green Knight. I was a little torn about going into the movie theater to see it. Once I saw that they were doing this event, I was like, oh man, perfect, done. It was like $20. It was a weird setup, like they were doing. It was like a 4 hour window that you could watch it. You had to use like it was called like the A24 screening room. And at first I was like, oh, does that mean I'm only going to be able to watch it like on a browser? Or how could I watch it? Luckily, they have an Apple TV app and a Roku app, so you make it a little easier to watch on your TV.
A24 has their own app.
Well, it's just called like it's called A24, but there's really nothing in it. Like if you were to go into it right now, it probably still just shows like information for the Green Knight and that the screening is over. Like there's really no other content. It just seems to be a kind of a way to get to this event. I don't know if they've done other screening events with other movies before or if this is their first time. The funny thing about it is they did this, and I don't know if this started today, but it turns out today you can just rent this movie at home for $20, like on other services. Like,
For $20?
yeah. I actually
wasn't the one-time event cheaper than that, or no?
no, the one-time event was 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I thought it was just going to be a one-time thing, and it would still be a while before you could rent it at home. And it turns out today you can now just rent it on any service. Like, because a friend of mine saw I posted something on Instagram about it, and he was messaging me today, like, "Oh, should I rent this?" And I was like, "Well, I don't think you can yet. I think you have to see it in the theater." He's like, "No, no, I see it right here." And I looked, and sure enough, on Apple TV, I can rent it now. And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
wow.
I mean, which is only somewhat of a bummer because like what I was going to say about the weird screening window, like it was like a 4 hour window, but it for those of us on the East Coast, it started at 9 p.m. on a weekday, which isn't that late. I mean, but at the same time, like I don't know, I work pretty early in the mornings. I'm like, and this is not a short movie. Like it's not super long, but it's not short. So I was like, oh man, can we start this window at 7? Why does it have to wait till 9?
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing that was cool about it is like before the movie, before like once the window started and you could stream it, it started with like an intro from I don't know if I got his last name right, but is it Ralph Ineson who plays the Green Knight?
Okay.
I don't know how familiar you are with that actor. He's one of those actors where it's like he's super familiar. He's been in a lot of stuff. Like he was actually one of the I think Ravengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in The Witch, but he plays the Green Knight. And there was like an intro with him kind of saying, "Hey, after the movie, he was gonna also be back after the movie to do something." And after the movie was over, they did this like 7 minute clip of him like reading a part of the like original work.
Oh,
Like him like just chilling and like I don't know if he was in his house, like he's smoking from a pipe, like the head of the pipe is like shaped like the head of the Green Knight. And he's got his dog hanging out with him. It was just like a super like cool, like here I am reading a part of this story. Like it was pretty cool. But anyway, I really enjoyed this movie like a lot. You had mentioned that you actually thought it, I think, went on a little long, didn't you?
I felt like the pacing made it feel longer, and I did feel that it was long, but it just felt like the pacing to me was the only thing I discounted against it. Really, is just that I could feel the length of it at times.
Right, but I liked it a lot. These kind of movies are, of course, up my alley. There was a part of me that was, based on the trailer, a little worried that it was going to be one of these movies that was almost a little too, what is it, like esoteric, where it's just, it was just kind of like really open to interpretation, and the narrative really wouldn't be wouldn't be very conventional. And actually, I found the narrative to be a little more conventional than I expected. Even though at times it's definitely leaving things open to interpretation, but
Right.
I don't know. It was more kind of normal storytelling than I think I expected out of this, but still in a very good way. I I liked all the actors in it, of course. I actually thought the runtime worked really well for me and the pacing worked well for me. You had mentioned that just visually it's beautiful, and you're absolutely right.
Mm,
It looks great. It is a bummer I didn't see it on the big screen.
yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I will certainly watch it again. I don't think the streaming last night was in 4K, but it still looked
Mm.
great. I will certainly watch it again in 4K when I get the chance. I guess I could rent it right now if I wanted to, but I'll probably wait, and I could even see that this is a movie I'll end up buying. But yeah, it was quite good. I liked it a lot. I highly recommend it. If you watch the trailer and this looks like the kind of thing that you're like, ooh, this looks interesting, then yes, you should watch it. If you watch this trailer and you're like, I hate movies like this, it may not be for you. But
Right.
I liked it a lot. So that's The Green Knight, which, like I said, I guess is available to rent now on various streaming services for like 19.99 at a premium because it's still in theaters. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I dug it. I liked it.
You know, one interesting thing I mentioned about it is that the when I talked about it is the sound, and I don't always hear sound in a way that I think that they intend it to be heard, but this one it really felt like they did a good job of conveying any kind of sound to feel like it had a certain amount of weight to it and heaviness to it, and just like it was really in your face. Because a scene that I can think of that really makes me kind of think about that a little bit is a scene when was Gawain was going down from the town to go out on his quest,
Yeah,
and he's just riding the horse, but you can hear the clump of the horse just clicking
yeah.
across
I remember
the
that
you
actually.
know
Yeah,
yeah, and it's like, and you can hear him even on the horse and shifting it and with the metal. It's just like you could just remember and hearing the sounds of things in a way that I felt like they really paid attention to it. And
hmm
I don't always hear that or notice that in movies, but I could absolutely in this one feel it and hear it.
Also, a really good score too, where the score
Yeah.
at times felt like it was appropriate to this era. A lot of choral
Hmm.
music, but then at times also very modern, like electronic instruments. Where but that may sound odd for this kind of movie, but it worked really well. Yeah,
Hmm.
I I,
Yeah.
I liked it. If it doesn't show,
Well, since we're talking A24,
yeah.
there's a A24 movie I had a chance to see that I don't know if anyone really knew this movie that came out, but I remember there being hype about it at one point in time. That Do you recall the story about a girl that met another girl and they went on a road trip to Florida, and it was a whole Twitter thing. It was a Twitter timeline, and the girl told the whole story in the Twitter timeline. And I think celebrities and people got involved in terms of um, reposting it and saying, "Oh, this is so interesting," and they were like, "Oh, you should make this into a movie." And well, they did make it into a movie. It's called Zola, and that's the girl's name. And I don't
Okay,
recall if
this
do
that does
you
not ring a
does
bell
this
with me
sound
at all.
familiar? No.
No.
Okay. So yeah, it's about this girl that's really a stripper, and she meets another stripper, and she wants to take her on a road trip to Miami to go to strip at this club and make some money for the night. And it becomes this extremely wild and out there story. And I think in idea it worked better than in execution. Um, it's definitely a wild story if you take it from the perspective of the person that all this is happening to. But yeah, it just felt like this one kind of was a little bit all over the place in certain things, and in some ways it was fascinating just to sit here and watch it and almost feel like a fly on the wall of their story as it's going on, because you're like, how could all this stuff really happen? Kind of one of those types of things because of how wacky and crazy things get. But at the same time, it's because I think the actors in it really sell it and give it a amount of weight that makes you kind of want to follow in and see what's going to happen next because of how kind of how far out it seems to be. One of the people that are in here that I really like, and I really only kind of come to know who he is in the last few years, is Coleman Domingo. And where I first saw him at was in Fear the Walking Dead TV series. And subsequently, since then, I've seen him in other things, and he's always been pretty good in everything I've seen him in. But in this one, he's also really good because he's like playing this kind of a, well, kind of a, for all intents and purposes, a pimp. And it's just a wild story. Again, I can't emphasize that enough how wild this story is. But it's not terrible. It's not bad. I just think that it was a little. It just needed to be tightened up in some ways, and maybe a little bit more of a deft hand at doing some of these things would have made it a little bit of a smoother, cohesive movie in a way that I don't think that it was. But there was enough interesting things in there that I was kind of like following along with it and still into it, even though I think that it ultimately is one that I was like, I don't know how I feel about this one. It didn't quite do what I was hoping it would do. But yeah, I would say it's still interesting enough to check out when you have a chance and it's at home or you can watch it on your couch.
Just like how you keep saying, like the story is like a wild ride, or however you put it. Like,
Yeah.
Like in that respect, I'm like, now I kind of want to watch this. It's like, what is this story? But then in the other side, it sounds like
it's insane.
Yeah, man, see, you say that, I'm like, man, even if it's not very good, I kind of want to know what this story is. So now I want to watch it. What? How did you watch it? What is it available? It's on. It's just like to rent, or
so. I don't know. I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Okay.
So this was, a month or so ago. So I'm not sure if it's available, if it's even available to rent or to buy.
Well, I mean, at least
point.
looking on IMDb right now, it does show like a $20 option on Prime Video anyway. So it's probably available that way on most services. Yeah, you wouldn't pay $20 to watch it.
No, I'd wait till it dropped a little bit. But yeah, again, I think it's one of those things where if you were to read the story and if you were following along with the Twitter thread as it was going on and hearing as these things are happening, it's a interesting read for sure. But when you translate it into the movie, it just, I think, loses something maybe, and it's not quite there. But as you really start to watch this thing unfold, it is a very crazy and wild ride. So there's that.
All right. Good to know. That's Zola. Another one I haven't heard of. I was trying to think of something else that I've watched. I know there's other stuff, and now it's like, I mean, I finished, there was the finale of White Lotus on HBO Max this week.
White Lotus.
Yeah, White Lotus. The White Lotus. I've been talking about it on the show. It's on HBO Max. It was my understanding at first, I think, because I thought they were labeling it as a miniseries, which maybe that was the intention, though it sounds like now it's been renewed for a second season. So yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Once that announcement came, I kind of figured this was going to be a one and done kind of deal. Not to say that's bad that it got renewed, because I was really enjoying it. The finale was good. Without talking spoilers. It didn't disappoint. It's a really good show. I was impressed again for how I felt about it after that pilot, which I was a little, I don't know. It's quite good. So
You right. Do you watch Succession?
No, I've never seen it.
I feel like you would like that too, in a
Yeah.
different way. Um, I've heard people compare this to that in certain ways, not in obvious ways, but or maybe more so in obvious ways, and less so in other ways. But um, it I am curious to check it out. I've heard a lot of buzz about it within the last 3 weeks. I would say that people seem to have been talking about it quite a bit.
Succession.
And White Lotus,
Oh, White Lotus. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I am curious to jump into it, especially because it seems like it's maybe not a quick binge, but there isn't a ton of episodes, and it seems like it'd be
Yeah. It's
not
only
too hard to get through.
it's only 6 episodes.
Seven, six,
I think just
yeah.
6. Yeah. And so yeah, it wouldn't take you long to knock it out. And again, it's good. And I feel like there were concerns at the beginning of, oh, is this just going to be another show about rich white people,
Right,
and their
which is
rich white people
Succession,
problems.
kind of.
But the movie or the show, sorry, is I think it has something to say about the way that these rich white people are interacting with the staff and the issues the staff has with them, and it's not just another show about you know white people problems. In my opinion.
That reminds me, as you say that, I heard that the I don't know if it's the showrunner or the director. I imagine it's the showrunner, or it could
I think
possibly be the writer.
he wrote and
It's
directed the episodes.
okay. The creator, Mike White.
Michael White, yeah.
Yeah. So I was hearing that one of his other shows is really good as well.
Well,
Enlightened. Have
he
you
had
heard of
another
that?
show on HBO that was canceled. That I think it didn't make it past like 1 or maybe 2 seasons. Yeah, Enlightened. I never saw it.
Mm,
I think it came out in like because I had looked that up at one point, so it's in my head. I think that came out in like 2012. Had Laura
mhm.
Dern in it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I never saw it. I heard it was pretty good, and he's done a lot of other
Yeah.
writing. I think that's definitely most of his credits are writing credits. I mean, looking here at his IMDb, he wrote School of Rock, The Good Girl, Orange County. He doesn't have as much directing credits under his belt. He's mostly, I think, known as a writer.
His face looks familiar, like he's an actor of
He's
some
got a
sort.
he
I
It definitely has acting
feel like I've
credits
seen
here
him in something before.
under his IMDb anyway. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. That was a show
So,
that kind of surprised me. Even just the context of like when I heard that this was like, again, I don't know how true this is. I heard this on another podcast that, with the pandemic, HBO was like, we need to produce something that we can, easily make during a pandemic. I think it's my understanding they approached Mike White, who they had worked with before. And, he created this show where it was shot all at this resort in Hawaii. Where I guess you could just have the entire crew and kind of secluded here at this resort and basically I think distance from everyone
hmm.
else and produce a show, and under those circumstances too it's like, is this really going to be any good? And yeah, it was quite good.
That's pretty cool then.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What about you? What's next for you?
There's a show that's on Disney Plus that I wouldn't say I was straight up looking forward to it, but I did have it on my radar of something that I wanted to watch when it came out, and it's Monsters at Work. I don't know. Did you ever hear about this one being on Disney Plus? Do you know
that's
the premise of it?
the that's the Monsters Inc. like spin-off show thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I know my kid. I've seen a couple episodes like with my kids. Yeah.
okay, so you're at least familiar with it.
I'm
And
familiar with it.
for
Yeah.
those who aren't, it takes place pretty much right after the movie, the
Hmm.
first movie, Monsters Inc. And now that them from being a scare academy or a scare place, it's making kids happy and cheerful, and it's got the main characters from the original Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully, but they are more, I wouldn't say background, but to a certain degree, they kind of are background because it introduces a new character who's straight out of the university, and he's coming in thinking he's going to be scaring kids, and so he's got his um, kind of life ahead of him, and he has all these ideas. And on the first day he's there, this is the same day that they're now converting over to making kids happy and laugh. And
Hmm.
so now he's kind of, his whole world is turned upside down because he came in thinking one thing and it's completely different. And now he's starting in this area that's really kind of a bottom rung instead of being a scarer or whatever at this point. Now he has nothing to do in that realm. And so he's kind of working with this motley crew of people that are repair people for the most part, as opposed to being on the floor and being involved in the big scheme of things. And it's him kind of learning the ropes and trying to get to a point where he can be involved in doing something more than just what he's ends up doing in the beginning, which is just helping these people repair stuff. And I've only seen the first. I want to say I saw the first two, maybe three, but from what I saw of the first two, I really liked the what they were going for. I thought they were doing a good job of continuing on these characters, and you got the original voice actors there as well for those roles, and so it felt very familiar in that way, and it didn't feel like it was really missing a beat. It felt like it was a nice continuation from what we had in a way that places the main characters in a role that allows room for other characters to come into it, and it feels more like it's almost like a old school sitcom in that way, where there's these
Yeah.
characters that are with the newer characters, and they're all kind of interacting at times and come in and out and have their own things that they go through, and
Hmm.
then the other newer characters have some stuff as well. And it felt like it was a nice little balance. But I liked what I saw so far, and I do want to continue watching it. And I'm not sure how many episodes there are of it in this first season, but I definitely want to finish out the season with all the other episodes.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm kind of curious what you're thinking.
I mean, I watched a couple episodes, and I mean, maybe I was kind of doing some other stuff too around the house while the kids were watching it. I guess I didn't really like sit and like watch, but I enjoyed
Mm,
it. I
mm,
guess I haven't been like kind of drawn to like really watch it all the way through, but I also didn't see the first episode or two, so I kind of
okay.
missed the kind of like introduction to the show, if you will.
Mm,
Uh, Maybe that's part of it, but that's good
hmm.
though. I mean, I was surprised too. Like I was watching it, and when you first see our main characters from Monsters Inc., I was like, are
Hmm.
those the actual voices, or did they just find somebody to kind of sound like them? Like,
Right.
but I was like, oh yeah, no, they're it's John Goodman and Billy Crystal doing
Billy
these.
Crystal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely them. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I remember when they were going to, they initially announced the show and that they were going to be a part of it. The
Hmm.
John Goodman and Billy Crystal. And I was like, well, that's a. I mean, they're starting up pretty solid by just at least having them and just
Yeah.
having this show in general. And to me, it was all in those early days of them announcing all the different things that they were going to have coming to Disney Plus. And there's still a whole bunch that they had announced that investors call that hasn't hit the streaming service yet. Like, I'm thinking off the top of my head the Moana stuff, and I wasn't there like a,
Oh yeah.
there was a, what's the movie with the alien, old school movie, and it was in Hawaii.
Oh,
Um,
Lilo and Stitch.
yeah, there was something there as
Yeah,
well,
I remember that too.
and so a lot of stuff that still hasn't even come out yet, and obviously it's animated stuff, so it's going to take a little while. There was a Zootopia thing too, so
Hmm.
yeah, they still have a lot more coming from their Disney side of their IP, but at least on this Pixar, from this Monsters at Work, I really did think that they did a good job in terms of translating it and bringing it home for kids that maybe loved the first one and are a little bit older and could still maybe watch this in a nostalgia sort of way, as funny as that might sound for the movie.
Right.
But at this point, the movie is pretty old.
It's been
older
a
than
little
you would
while
think it
now.
is.
That's one of the earlier
Yeah,
Pixar films. Like it's
yeah.
yeah. God, I'm almost
So
scared to
it's
look
been a
up how old
while.
it is.
I know, right? Like probably like
Uh,
2010, 2011.
really? Is that what you think?
Let's see. Let me really give it a good
Give it
guess.
a good guess.
Okay. 2006.
2001.
Wow.
Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
wow. That's
way back.
crazy.
It's way back there.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is.
that is one of the early Pixar films.
Wow.
Not the first or second, but back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't
Yeah.
even think
So,
to kind of guess in my head before I looked. I just kind of looked really quick. I was like, "Ooh, wow, 2001." Anyway, by the
yeah.
way, I
Yeah.
did watch finally the 2 episodes so far of What If. I've seen those now.
Okay.
It's good. I like the animation a lot, and I like
Yeah.
storytelling a lot. Like I know the first episode and the second episode. I guess it's like yeah, like it's not like these kind of stories seem to like really connect to anything we know in the MCU right now. But I really enjoyed them. If
Hmm.
anything, I think I might have enjoyed the first episode more than the second. Um, but I liked them both. They're quite good.
Yeah. I did see the second episode as well. And the second episode, I think I liked that one a little bit more, and not just because it was T'Challa and getting to hear Chadwick Boseman's voice.
Right.
I think what made me like that one a little bit more is that it plays with the premise a little bit more. And
It's
whereas
true.
the first one, it really is kind of like you just insert Peggy for Steve, and everything else kind of flows mostly the same. It's not too
Mostly,
many
yeah.
differences. And this one is just completely out there in terms of what's different and all the different ways that you can change things based on the switch, basically. And so I like that it really plays with the idea a little bit more in that respect. But both of them I've definitely enjoyed for sure.
Yeah, I think like when this got announced, there was a part of me that's like, we have so much in the MCU already, and then okay, we're
Mm.
doing this animated show. And I love animation, to be clear. I don't want it to sound like, oh, it's animation, I don't care. But it's like
Hmm.
we're doing an animated show and it's like about like these what if scenarios, like kind of a multiverse kind of thing. And it's like immediately I think I was like, I mean it sounds interesting, but among all the other stuff in the MCU, it's definitely not the most hyped up I'm about anything. I was a little like,
Yeah, I
do
get
I
that.
care about this? But watching the first 2 episodes, I was like, no, I'm all in. I really enjoy it. I
Yeah.
like the storytelling kind of like narrator thing we have got going on with what is it, the Watcher,
Yeah,
who's
Jeffrey Wright doing the
yeah,
voice.
with Jeffrey Wright doing the voice. I really like that kind of setup for the show, uh, where it's not just totally like here's a random episode where we change something. Like I think that's a key that makes it even better having this narrator that's kind of setting context for what's happening. I like
Hmm.
a lot. And yeah, again, the animation is pretty stellar. It's a little different. It looks
Yeah.
great. And going back to the voices thing, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, at least so far, we've got all these actors we know from the MCU doing the voices for their
Right.
parts, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like the fact that they lean into the animation, making them look how they would look,
Yeah,
almost how their live action versions look, and down to the details of their physicality and stuff. So
yeah, because even
I
in
don't
that
know what that
first
means.
episode, like you've got Bradley Whitford as a voice
Yeah,
in it, and I'm like, yeah, that looks like Bradley Whitford. I mean, they could make him
right.
look however you want, and you're right, it looks like him.
Yeah. And to me, it's like just speculating because we obviously don't know, but it means like could some of these things eventually transfer over to live
Right.
action in some
I
sort of
crossed my
way?
mind,
'Cause-
especially again going back to him. I was like, you cast him in this part. Like, are we going to
right,
see this
right,
guy live action at some point? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
and it'd be believable.
Right.
So yeah, it totally makes your mind wonder. And we
Hmm.
got some multiversal stuff coming up in live action, so you just never know. But at this point, it is supposed to be just kind of its own thing, and although it is kind of interesting just from a timing perspective that this series comes out after Loki, and how based on the way Loki ends, it's just interesting that this would be the next show that comes out from Marvel. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how it all unfolds. It's 9 episodes, and so this one we'll be having this one and I think there's before we go into Hawkeye. I think that's the next one,
Yeah. When is that
but
again? Sorry.
I want to say it's not until November. I could be off on that, but I think it was either November or late October. Because obviously
I'm
this
trying to see if
one's
I can find that, but I don't know if there's a
if there
real
was
like
a release
a
date.
concrete release date. November 24th is what I'm seeing.
Okay, I was gonna say I thought there was one. Yeah, so there'll be a little bit of a break, I think, because with this one being 9 episodes, we'll still run through, I guess, into maybe a little bit of October, but
Hmm.
then have the rest of that time until November. So about a good month out off,
Right.
I guess maybe. But yeah, well, while we're talking about animation, there was a show that came out on Netflix that is animated that I had been waiting to see, which is the new He-Man show, Masters of the Universe
Um,
Revelation, that Kevin Smith was a big part of doing and show running. And they only did this a very odd thing in that they did not release all of it at once. They only released a certain amount of episodes in this, I guess. I don't even know if it's considered a first season or first half of a first season or what, but they released the first 6 episodes, and then there's another I want to say six or four episodes after that.
hmm.
Uh the animation is gorgeous. It's just super beautiful and exactly what I was. Well, I didn't know that I wanted it, but when I saw it, I was like, yes, this is exactly how it should look, and this is awesome. And um, I will say there's a lot of controversy about the show that's out there,
Oh, is there?
and yes, very much so. And I get it from a certain point of view and that perspective, but I also feel like some of it isn't Kevin's fault, and that if this had been just dropped all at once, like Netflix normally does, it might have alleviated some of the criticism that it got. But at the same time, yeah, I think people would have still found major reasons to complain about it because of what goes on in the show within the first even within the first episode, let alone the first few episodes. But ultimately, I like what they're doing with it, and am so intrigued to see more and see the last bit of it, and hope that it goes more seasons because based off of the other trailer that we got today for the other He-Man series that Netflix is doing, which is just interesting.
Yeah.
The fact that there's two concurrent He-Man series on the same streaming service. Um, I do want to see more from this one because this one is more my speed. The one that we got at the trailer for today was more look like it's more aimed at, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 8 to 13 year olds or so, or somewhere around there, because it seems like a younger demographic that they're going for, and that's completely fine, and it doesn't have to be for me, but this one does seem more for me, and it kind of continues from that old '80s series that was back in the day, and I used to love the old He-Man series and still have some of those figures. So I like I said, I understand what the complaints were, but I'm waiting to see the whole thing. And not that I had issues, I didn't have major issues. I definitely had some issues with the first six, but I didn't have the major issues that a lot of people are having with it. And so I I think the animation is great, and the voice acting was good. So I'm really just settled into it and want to see what the rest of the season brings, and if it goes good from there, to see some more from it.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the controversy. I'll admit, I've kind of quickly Googled it while you were
I was going to say,
talking.
did you look it up while I was
I
talking?
did. I mean, I've been wanting to watch it as well. So I guess in a certain respect, this is somewhat spoiled for me so far, but it's not that big a deal. I don't think.
Yeah. No, it's
So
not.
yeah, yeah. I wasn't aware of any of that, but I won't mention it on here for anyone who doesn't
Right.
want to know. But okay. I guess I get that without
Yeah.
having seen it. I mean, my quick
Yeah.
reaction is, oh, okay, yeah, I could see how that could be, it could cause
Especially if
controversy
you
for
didn't
sure.
release the whole season at once, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I mean, we are running out of time. Are there any other things you really wanted to get to before we wrap
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, I don't have too much more, honestly, and I can probably still fit it in before we get out of here. But one of the other ones that was on Netflix that I'd really been waiting to see was the third part and conclusion of this new Transformers run that they've had on
Mm,
Netflix. This one was Transformers uh, Beast Wars. And this one introduces some of the characters from that older series that was Beast Wars, that were in that series descendants from the original Transformers, G1 Transformers. And in that series, they had their Decepticons weren't Decepticons; they were like primals, and they turned into different types of prehistoric animals, like a dinosaur, or in this sense of the Optimus Primal, he turned into a big gorilla, and so it was like they were introduced those characters into this version of the Transformers with the G1 right alongside them, and I think that what this third series did is really try and bring together as a culmination of the old school aspects of what we had from those Beast Wars and the original G1, while tying up this story of what they were doing in the first place and how they got off of Cybertron, and introducing um, a bigger threat. And they leave it in a way to where they could do more if they want to, or if not, they can kind of leave it here. And I, again, one of the big things and highlights for me of this series was just seeing the way it's created, the animation, the CG for the the larger than life characters in this, because they look like the ones that I remember growing up and seeing them in the animated form. They the designs of them look like those characters. And so that was one thing that right off the bat I appreciated and really loved. But then the aspects of the story of it being completely different and new from what they did back in the day. They're not just retelling that story; they're doing it in a different way that I think made me interested even more into it, because there's not a human to be seen in this entire series. There's like it's
mm,
there's they're not there yet. Even when they're in this series, in this third part of the series, they're on Earth. It's at a time that's before any humans are on the planet. So it's all prehistoric time in that sense. So it's good to just not have to worry about that human element. And sometimes in some of these iterations of Transformers, you have the annoying kids that seem to be on these shows that they always have there, and there's none of that. It's you're dealing with the Autobots and the Decepticons, and that's it, and that's what you're dealing with in that world. And I like that, and that was one of the elements about it that really pulled me into it, is that you don't have to worry about that annoying aspect. And I'm really hoping they do more with it, just because, again, this is something that's more my speed for what they're doing. Obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but if people don't know, they are doing another Transformers movie that is going to be based off of Beast Wars, but also Optimus Prime and Bumblebee will be in it as well. So it's supposed to be kind of more continue from the line of Bumblebee rather than continuing from the line of the last Transformers movie. So I'm hopeful that it'll turn out good. And the director for Creed 2, I forget his name, I think it's Stephen Cable Jr., is directing this new Beast Wars Transformers movie. So I got hopes that that one will be good, and because I really did enjoy Bumblebee, so I'm hoping that that one turns out well also. And one last thing I wanted to really mention, I've talked about this one show on here a few times called Evil. It stars Mike Coulter, who was Power Man. Now Luke Cage, and he that show was on CBS, and it's on Paramount Plus. Well, the creators of that show did another or have done other shows in the past that I'd heard good things about, but never got around to watching. One was The Good Wife. Never watched the show, but I remember hearing good things about it, and it was on CBS for the longest time.
Right.
Well, they had ended up doing at one point a spinoff calling it. It's called The Good Fight, and it's on Paramount Plus. And I started watching it, and it was based on the strength of the creators of Evil, Robert and Michelle King. And the premise of this is that it stars Christine Baranski, and she was at this law firm that she ends up leaving to go to this all-black law firm that is co-ran by Delroy Lindo. And it's this kind of a lawyer show, but it's done in a way that I feel is well done. The characters are interesting in it. The cases that they are involved with are interesting as well, and it has an unfiltered aspect to it because it's on Paramount Plus. And I'm really into it and enjoying it. I'm probably in the first season, but I'm like maybe halfway into it, like 7 or 8 episodes into the first season, and really been enjoying it. So there's that, and then this other one that I really want to check out from them. I don't know if you heard of it. I remember hearing about it, but I never watched it. It's called Brain Dead, and it was on CBS. It didn't even last. I don't think it lasted the season.
Was that the one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Yes.
Yes. I think I saw like one episode.
Okay.
And it was different, and I meant to watch more, and I never did. And then when it didn't really go past like however many episodes they made or the first full season and it died, I was just like, well, okay, I'm not going to bother. But I do remember that.
Yeah, so they also did that show as well. And in hearing about the Good Fight and The Good Wife and Me Like an Evil, I'd heard that this show was also good and it had promise, but obviously got canceled before its time, sort of thing. And it's also available on Paramount Plus, and I will probably check that out, even though I know that it's not long for the world in that sense. But because I like these creators, I want to see more from them, so I probably will check that out at some point too.
Have you seen the trailer for that movie she's going to be in on Netflix, or Kate?
I
think it is.
I saw the picture of it. I never did get around to watching the actual trailer for it. Did you?
Yeah, I watched the trailer. It looks like it looks like a trailer for a show where part of me was like, and I don't know how to explain why I feel this way, but the movie could actually be better than the trailer's making it look like.
Okay.
If that makes any sense, because normally it's the other way around, right? Yeah. Normally you watch these trailers and it's like, oh man, this looks awesome or just looks terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
usually either the movie's just not, just a well-made trailer and it shows not any good, or it
Mm.
really is terrible if it looked terrible. But here it's like there's something about the way they're presenting it, and they show you these brief looks at other aspects to her character that they don't show, I think, enough of in the trailer. That I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
actually think I want to watch this. But it's like she's an
Okay.
assassin. Woody Harrelson plays like, I don't know, her manager, however you would put that.
Handler or
Handler,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It looks like it could be good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
just made me think of
I'll
that.
have to check out the trailer at least. And I guess before we get out of here, then, as we're talking about trailers, did you watch the Eternals trailer from
Yeah, it
today?
was weird. I woke up, like, I get up early for work. And I wake
Right.
up and I check social media or check my phone and I'm like, why did they drop this trailer? Like what looks like to be like 3 a.m. like,
Yeah.
like, okay, whatever. um, but yeah, I watched it I've watched it a couple times now.
Mm.
It looks good. I'm
Yeah.
excited. You had asked me, I haven't answered. Like, I want to
That's
read. I've
true.
never read a Turtle comics. I know they just did like a reboot, and I still haven't started those yet, so I still want to read
Okay.
those. But no, I'm excited for this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Between this trailer coming out
Hmm.
and the reactions, I don't know if you've seen them, but the reactions to Shang-Chi, I'm like,
I've
man.
seen one reaction, and I'm like, man, I'm trying to stay away from movie theaters right now, but I guess I'm gonna have to
Oh.
see this. I'm like,
All you have to do is go, on a
I gotta
Tuesday night or
go,
something,
exactly.
or a
I'm gonna have
Monday
to go
night
at a
or whatever.
time when like people aren't gonna be there. Well, the one
Right.
thing that works out in my favor is that Shang-Chi is coming out the weekend of Dragon Con, and
Mm.
the reality is I'm probably not going to make it away from the convention at any point to go to a movie theater to
Right.
see that. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to see it opening weekend. And I'll be distracted enough by the convention that I'm not going to be like, oh God, this sucks, I'm not seeing it. So by the time I see it, at least like the rush will have made it through. Hopefully I can see it when it's not too busy. But I do want to see an IMAX because I think they shot at least a lot of it on IMAX cameras, right? So I want to see it on
And
IMAX
I've been
theater if I
hearing
can.
people say you guys see it in the biggest screen possible. So yeah, that's where I'm planning on seeing it as well.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I will say that I got my fingers crossed for you very much so is that if I'm not mistaken, this will probably be the first Marvel movie you didn't see opening weekend. And I'm really hoping that no one spoils any post-credit scenes for you
Mm.
between that time and the time you get to see it.
Yeah. I'll have to just stay away from what I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Is what it is. People suck.
I know. And they do. They
They
almost
do.
start spoiling at this point the same hour something comes out, let alone the say weekend, So
Yeah. Well, Ryan Reynolds, that tweet or Instagram
I
post.
know.
Sorry, real quick, we
I
do have to go.
know.
But you mentioned on the last episode you saw Free Guy, and you made a point to bring up, oh, there's all these cameos which I didn't even know about, and you were like, they were well
Right.
done, they weren't too forced, I guess, like. And then
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see this post, and it's like him showing, I think, literally almost every actor that had a cameo in
Yeah.
that movie, and I'm like, well, I guess I know who's cameoing in the movie now.
Yeah,
Like this
it's
is
so
like
disappointing
the
that he would do that.
Monday after the opening weekend. It wasn't like it had been a
Uh,
week or something. Like,
No,
weird.
no, I'm so disappointed that he would do that. Him of all people, who I feel
Right.
like would know better than to do that. He did something like that, and I was like,
So
the only,
weird.
only good thing I guess is just you don't know context, and even a couple of those cameos I didn't even catch. So it makes me curious to go back and try and watch it again to see if I can catch it a second time around. But yeah, I was just a little bit disappointed that he
That was
did
a little
that.
weird. But yeah, we do need to wrap things up and get out of here. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone listening and watching. You can email us at feedback@flickereffect.com. You can reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at Flicker_effect. We do stream these shows live on YouTube. YouTube.com/Flickr Effect. You can leave your questions and comments there and all that good stuff. Subscribe, like, hit bell icon. You know the drill. Yeah, I mentioned last week we are streaming on Twitch now, which we are. I guess I didn't realize you have to like turn on, I guess, to save the streams. So I believe our stream streamed last week, but I can't see it. But I've turned that on. So after this episode, I'm going to see how it went on Twitch, hopefully. And I mean, Twitch is new to me. I haven't really done a lot on there. I don't think I don't think content stays on there even forever. It depends on like your status on Twitch. It either stays there for like 2 weeks or longer if you're connected to Amazon Prime or what have you. But anyway, you can find us on all the different places. With that, I'm David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
Thanks for listening and watching.